got a pretty good variety of things to talk with you about today. A lot of classic dungeon stuff, as well as a little bit of a preview of some things we're planning for our first major content patch, 4.1. But first thing we wanted to get into is a little bit of a talk about some classic heroics. This is something that we've introduced for Cataclysm that we're really, really hyped about. And it's basically the concept of taking a dungeon that we know players enjoy and love. It's something they've been playing at this point for almost 6 years, and being able to turn it into something completely new that players can experience in Cataclysm. And in doing that, there's a number of things you have to do to make that actually come out good and feel like something that's really different, and not just taking it, you know, upping the HP of some of the creatures, swapping out a few things. Instead, we looked at this in a way that we could actually get a chance to basically redo the dungeon from the ground up, but keep all the flavor and all the things about the dungeon that players really like. So the dungeons we did this with for Cataclysm are Deadmines and Shadowfang Keep, and I think those are two fan favorites. And part of the concept here is not to just take the encounters and make them different and add new stuff, but we also wanted to make it feel like it was part of the world. So not only are you going to see new bosses and new creatures throughout the whole dungeon, you're also going to see new quests that are in these dungeons as well. And we really think it kind of adds a new level to the dungeon as a whole. So you're not just going in there, like you might run through the LFD tool and get queued up into the dungeon. And you're going to have a whole experience. It's not just going to be running through, killing a few bosses and jamming through. We've changed it now for all the dungeons in Cataclysm that the quests actually appear inside the dungeon right at the front. I imagine there's a lot of people here that remember doing the Nexus and showing up at the front door and realizing you had a giant quest chain to get done before you could go in. And this is something we obviously noticed as the developers, and that we wanted to get fixed too. So that's something we've got taken care of for not only all the new dungeons in Cataclysm, but all the classic dungeons all the way back have that feature. So kind of speaking to the character of the dungeons, we really wanted to make these places feel like they were a part of the world. And the best way to do that is to involve them in the storyline. And so with these two dungeons, we're kind of in a situation where it works out perfect, because in Silverpine, Shadowfang Keep kind of fits that role just right. You worked your way through the zone, and it kind of works out well as the climax. Obviously, Deadmines works the same way. You've seen us do a little bit of this in some of the expansions. We've done this before, like at Gundrak, kind of at the end of Zoldrak, as like that final dungeon you get to where you accumulate the story, finish it off. You could look at Stratholme, kind of similar in Eastern Plaguelands. And that's something we wanted to do here. We really wanted to carry that story through. So the bosses that you see in these dungeons, you're actually going to interact with on the quests while you're playing through the zone. And we just think that gives the dungeon so much more of a flavor and a reason why you're doing the dungeon. You're not just going through it to earn your justice points. You're going through it to actually finish the story and complete the quests that you're working on. So finally, along the way we were doing this, originally, as you know, we kind of announced these as a heroic only thing. We were going to do a heroic level 85 version for Deadmines and Shadowfang. But along the way, we ended up changing so much stuff that now the normal versions are basically updated as well. So it's kind of a feature that's going to go out for everyone. And you've got a back entrance for Oldemon. Out in Badlands, you can come in the backside. Now, they would take that backside entrance and turn that into the main entrance for the second wing, thereby basically taking Oldemon, converting it into a winged situation. It gives us two dungeons that are more bite-sized chunks, easier for players to understand, easier to navigate, and at the same time, we get a chance to go in there and mix up the encounters a little bit and deliver a new experience. Oh, a favorite I see. Am I in the orange section or the green? This might be purple, not sure. So a number of people have gone through Meridon. We've always felt that it was obviously hard to navigate, hard to know where you're at. So this was a great place as an example of someplace we could go in, break it up a little bit, and turn it into a winged dungeon that would feel better for players. So this is what we're looking at to break it up. So we basically kind of changed it into a Meridon living section and then a separate section with Princess on the left side. And instead of having where we have now, where we have multiple instance portals and entrances, we'd break it up, same deal, smaller size bite chunks. Clearly, this would be much easier for someone to navigate and get through. And it's just going to be a better experience for players overall. Especially with goblins and worgens coming in Cataclysm, we figure there's going to be a lot of new people that are going to roll new races and want to go back through, obviously, the classic world since we just finished redoing all of it. So we want to make sure that the dungeons don't get left behind in this redo of everything. We want them to be up to par with everything else. So creative wings was our first method. We've got another thing here. Oh, scissors. So there might be some other ways to fix things, which might just be to cut them because they just might not have worked out that great. And so we've got a couple examples here of places where we feel like we've got dungeons that could, they could use a little trim, a little nip, a little tuck here and there. Sections that might be too long. It's just areas where you get into this dungeon and it feels like you're going somewhere, but you're fighting trash for a long period of time. Bosses are too far spread apart. There's nothing interesting. So in these cases, we want to go into these dungeons, trim a few areas out, and get them to feel better. So we've got a couple examples of this. Oh. So I'm sure the first thing you're thinking, the dungeon you want to do right when you join LFD, you want to queue up for Sunken Temple, obviously, straight away. So this is an example of Sunken Temple. It's a giant dungeon, and taking nothing away, it's a great place. Obviously, we've all been playing in it for years, but we think we can make it better. And there might be a simple way to do that. It just so happens is the way Sunken Temple is laid out, you've kind of got the top floor and the bottom floor. And it's actually pretty simple of a way that we can modify that and have it actually work really well in the game without having to make too many changes to it. And this is an example of a dungeon where this change has made it into the game for Cataclysm. So this will be there on ship. We've got another example here just to get a little bit of a better view of what this place looks like. So this would be before as it exists now, and then this would be what we'd be trimming off. And in situations like this, we don't feel like we're really losing that much because the dungeon already has a really good number of bosses. It's still going to feel great the way that the encounters play out and the way that it works. So I think for the players, it's just going to feel better, and no one really loses in this situation. It all works out well. Oh, here's another one. So I think we all know Wailing Caverns. Everyone's probably been there at some point. And I'm pretty sure we've all gotten lost in the maze at some point in Wailing Caverns. So, this one, another simple solution. Let's see, what should we do here? Oh. Some of these decisions weren't too hard to make, So something like Wailing Caverns, it's pretty easy to take the bosses that are in there and move them around because they don't necessarily have rooms that are built specifically for them. As you've seen, as WoW has grown through the years, we've basically created almost every boss has its own room with a look and a feel that matches. A place like Wailing Caverns, it was so long ago, it doesn't really have that. So it's pretty easy for us to take a boss and move it around when we cut an area like this. Obviously, there's a boss or two in the maze that we cut out, but we're able to move those around and put them in a different place without causing too much trouble. So now I'm going to hand it over to Scott here, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the concept of our raid philosophy for Cataclysm.
Thanks, Corey. At the beginning of every expansion, we always take some time to look back, see what worked, see what didn't. We started talking about what we wanted out of Cataclysm raiding, and I just wanted to go through some of the things that we identified as goals or things to work towards. One was more raid zones for ship. Woo. So Naxxramas was awesome, but at the same time, it was one huge Gothic zone, and we wanted to feel like we wanted to break it up a bit more with different art styles, different styles of bosses, so that we identified that as a pretty early goal. Another one, we wanted to make the coolest encounters yet. We started actually beta testing a lot of our raid encounters this last Sunday, and we'll be continuing to beta test over the next few weeks. And so far, it's looking really good. All the players that have gone through our new raids, new dungeons, or new raid encounters have really been super excited. We've got things like players moving back and forth through the air to fight 3 Jinn on separate platforms. We've got you wrangling magma worms. We've got you trying to be as quiet as possible so this big blind dragon doesn't kill you. There's all these interesting new mechanics that we've got that are really going to, we think, play out well and will be a lot of fun for you guys. Another one, like Corey was just talking about, how we want to put all these things in nice bite-sized chunks. So we feel that's pretty important because it's a whole lot cooler when you go into a raid, you have a night of raiding, everyone's gotten together, and you actually go through the raid and finish the raid in one night. It's a way better feeling to end a night saying, okay, this is done, as opposed to coming back in and say, well, we got to do another couple nights. So we really want to take the raids and put them into more bite-sized chunks. Thanks. Another thing we wanted to continue with is content for everyone, and this sort of gets to our normal and heroic style of raiding. We feel like that worked out really, really well in Lich King. There was normal content for a lot of people, and then for the people that really wanted a greater challenge, there was heroic. That worked out great, and we're going to keep on doing those kinds of